I got to get to this quick because there's so much to talk about here relating to California's speed limiter mandate. And I'm going to get fired up about this. Full, advisement, full warning here. But this is a big, big, big deal in California. Now, granted, I was just there for work last week. And again, the weather was beautiful, but there's definitely some things going on that is very anti-car in California. And that is namely Senate Bill 961. Now, this comes by way of SEMA, who published some things about why this is terrible and it needs to go away. And you may know SEMA from the car show, but the Specialty Equipment Market Association, they do a lot of political advocacy for car enthusiasts and manufacturers who make things for car enthusiasts. SEMA is a wonderful organization. Just throwing that out there. But California says that by the year 2027, if this bill is passed, right, it's still in the stage of being a bill. It hasn't been passed yet, but they're saying if it is to be passed, then new vehicles after 2027 will be mandated to have speed limiters that give you only a 10 mile per hour buffer over the speed limit. So they have to use GPS. They got to use these other factors to know what the speed limit is. And then they can say, well, you can go 10 over. That's it. And I'm not here to say you should be speeding. No, in fact, on the contrary, speeding is illegal. Right? It is. But this isn't about if speeding itself is right or wrong, because it's already illegal. We already know that. But this is so much more than that. And this goes into a lot of the principles that I've talked about when I've talked about the government mandated kill switch, which is still in effect. That's still like a rule that's going to happen here. When it comes to, drunk driving, and the car's got to use AI and figure out if you're impaired and then shut the car off. It's ridiculous. Again, we can't have that either. But, there are a lot of problems with speed limiters, and getting the fact that speeding is already illegal out of the way. Again, I'm not condoning speeding by saying any of this, but the problem with speed limiters, by putting that in the car and saying you physically cannot speed, is a broad solution to a problem that they have yet to actually correctly diagnose the issue, the cause of the problem, which, by the way, it's not speeding, but I will get to that in just a minute. But it broadly assumes that everyone's a criminal, whether you're a mom driving your kids to school, whether you're a car enthusiast, whether you're a criminal running drugs. It just assumes everyone is a criminal, right? And there are perfectly legitimate and legal instances where speed can be used, especially in cases of an emergency. There are just times where sometimes an ambulance isn't going to get to you in time, or there's any number of issues where it would be legal and prudent to speed, and you may save somebody's life in doing so. And most importantly, this opens up a door to more legislation that shouldn't be open, because for one, it doesn't address the actual problem. People are still going to manage to hurt others with vehicles through negligence. Cars are dangerous. Yeah, I get it. They are. Driving is dangerous. I mean, driving is significantly more dangerous statistically than commercial air travel. Yes, we think flying around in a plane is dangerous. Yes, you hear things about, door plugs coming off of 737s lately, right? You hear about those because they make big news, but statistically speaking, air travel is very safe compared to driving. But the thing is, I mean, I've seen people be completely negligent, reckless, and dangerous at or even below the speed limit. Like, the speeding itself is not the only issue we have. If anything, we have we have an epidemic of unskilled, untrained drivers, and we're going to get into that. But the thing is, what the door this opens, right, is you say, hey, we're going to ban speeding physically. Bear in mind, it's already illegal. It's already illegal, but we are going to physically prevent your car from speeding. And then, well, people are still going to get hurt. People are still driving distracted. They're still doing dumb things. They still don't know how to drive. So they're just going to be crashing. But, there's still going to be road deaths. No matter what you do, there's still going to be road deaths. And then if you're in this line of thinking that, well, we got to ban this to fix that, then you might say, well, the next logical step would be, let's just ban humans driving altogether. We got these new self-driving cars. They can figure it out. They can drive better than humans. And hey, even if they can't, we'll just mandate it so the manufacturers just have to figure it out in a short amount of time. And that'll clearly make things safer. And then you will still have problems as time goes on. There will still be things that happen on the roads. And then they'll say, well, why don't we just ban driving altogether? That seems like the safer alternative. Let's just ban cars categorically as a whole. So yeah, through speed limiters, you open up this possibility for this other legislation that is just a reactionary legislation to things that are happening. And for the record, speed is not the problem. Let me say this again. Speed is not the problem. Now, saying speed is the problem, let me give you an analogy. And this might sound familiar if you listened to the show before. It's not the first time I've used this analogy. But saying speed is the problem is like saying that a man who pushes another guy off of a building and kills him, gruesome, I know, right? But it's like saying that guy who pushed this other dude off of a building isn't at fault. Rather, gravity itself is the problem and needs to be banned. I mean, if California could ban gravity, they probably would. But I mean, that's for one. I mean, that's completely removing any accountability from the person who actually committed the crime. Yes, gravity ultimately is part of why this guy died after falling off of a building. But wouldn't you say the cause of that was the dude who pushed him off of the building? Just throwing that out there. Now, I also, need to mention this, and I've mentioned this story before, but back in January 2022, a 2019 Dodge Challenger entered an intersection in Las Vegas at 103 miles per hour and struck a minivan, killing 9 people. And that's very tragic. My heart breaks for the families of those involved with that. It's truly terrible. But the NTSB determined that the Challenger's driver was using cocaine and PCP, and that impaired his decision-making. Oh, yeah, and he had a history of speeding offenses, too. But look at that last point there. Cocaine and PCP. Now, let's also put this in perspective with how many speeding deaths are there. Well, that's kind of hard to quantify, and there's a reason for that. But NSC.org reports that 12,000 people are killed every single year in crashes related to speeding, and that is countrywide, all across the United States in total. And the legislators pushing for things like this bill in California say that's their primary motivation. We got to stop this problem. Now, they consider here, according to NSC.org, quote, a crash is considered speeding related if the driver was charged with a speeding related offense. Okay, so if someone was distracted by their cell phone and they were speeding, but they crashed because they were distracted. They crashed into a static barrier because they weren't paying attention, because they were looking at their cell phone, but they were also doing 10 over the speed limit while they were doing it, maybe because they were distracted. That's like, and then they said that becomes part of this statistic. That becomes one of this 12,000, this statistic of 12,000 people that are killed, quote, because of speeding. That's not, using my analogy of a guy pushing another guy off a roof. That's like saying gravity is the reason this person died. The reason they crashed was because of the distracted driving, because of the cell phone. That was the reason for the crash. Yes, speed maybe made the crash worse, but speed sure as heck wasn't the actual cause of it. And it's not like if you drive your car that speeding will literally kill you. The second you go 5 over the speed limit, your car's just going to immediately implode and get sucked into a void, you along with it. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And I got to point this out. I got to point this out. I'm fired up about this. You can tell I'm fired up about this. But California, according to CDC.gov, California in 2021 has had over 10,000 deaths by illegal drug overdose. So 12,000 speeding deaths for all 50 states in total versus 10,000 illegal drug overdose deaths in just California. And by the way, that 12,000, again, it's arguable if those were even actually caused by speeding. And so what's the real problem here? I think my point's making itself. Also, just side note, California is number 1 in the country for those drug overdose deaths. Number 1, 10,000 in just that one state. So now here are my proposals, though. I'm not just here to complain. The government is telling us that traffic fatalities are on the rise compared to, say, a decade ago. Coincidentally, smartphone ownership has also increased in that same time. But I believe drivers are more distracted than ever, okay? I mean, most of our problems do stem from poor driver training. So you've got drivers who are not trained in the dynamics of what their cars do or anything aside from gas pedal, brake pedal, park, reverse, neutral, and drive, right? Like that's it, okay? And then you compound that with the fact that they're distracted by all these different things that are going on. So we already have poor drivers to begin with. The driving knowledge requirements, the actual skill requirements of operating the vehicle are a complete joke even compared to other Western countries. And so I think that if the government were to do anything, right, if they were to step in and do anything, it would be we need to revise the skill requirements for our drivers. I mean, the fact that there are plenty of private driving schools that exist whose reason for existing is telling parents who've got a new teen driver, hey, the state driving requirements are honestly pretty low and they're not going to help your kid be a safer driver. Bring your kid to our driving school and we'll teach him all these dynamics and these things about car control, traction, weight transfer, maybe even threshold braking, all of these different factors, and how to not be distracted, how to be vigilant, how to be a defensive driver, have some, situational awareness as a driver. They teach them all these things that you don't get in the, state-backed driving programs in many ways. And so, I mean, that's an issue. We really need to address that. We need to create better drivers. Let's start training good drivers for once and see what that does. And the speed limiter thing here is just a complete invasion into what we hold dear as drivers, as car enthusiasts. Again, not saying that speeding is what we hold dear, but being in control of the car. And you can't open this door for them to just ban everything outright. So, hey, let me know your thoughts on this. Facebook.com/AutomotiveADHD. If you're in California, check out a link. I've got a link up there where you can write a representative about this. Don't go anywhere.
At the Speed Council, getting things done fast is our priority. We do everything fast, from driving, working, sleeping, and eating.
Someone help, he's choking!
This is Tim.
Hello.
And by the time this ad is over, he'll have bicycled across the earth 69 times. Nice. Even if our name sounds unfamiliar, you know our work. F1? Pfft, child's play. The world's first supersonic jet? Yep, that was us. Apollo 11? Also us. The fastest animal in the sea? Hell, we even wrote the Wikipedia article. Fast. And we're so dedicated to speed that we've genetically engineered the world's first hyperspeed speed machine.
With this scientific breakthrough, you can interact with and download your favorite automotive podcast a whole day early. How's that for fast? Learn more at facebook.com/automotiveADHD.
This message approved by the Speed Council and the Church of Fast Things.